Okay, let's get in now to, this is going to be, I think, the biggest thing that we discuss here today on this episode, and that is, and we're going to use this as a jumping off point, but the tweet that the CrossFit Games sent out earlier this week, today's Wednesday, I think it was Monday or Sunday, this came out, Easter Sunday or Monday, and the tweet read, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't read it exactly, but it was something that's the fact of the fittest will be crowned in 2020.
Yeah.
So they're going to do this, which is good news. I mean, we don't know what that's going to look like, but I think that we know a few things, and we can kind of, I think, extrapolate from that and maybe zero in on what this is going to look like and what it's likely to look like and what it's not likely to look like. Mm-hmm. So I think we were talking about this before we came on. There are 4 options, the way I look at it. The first being you don't do it at all. Just cancel them.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
now looks like it's not going to, like they're actually going to do something.
Yep.
The second is that you do it in person as planned. Probably not going to happen because you know, the timeline and the way things are right now, I'm not sure if you can put that together and you can have that big of an event in that amount of time. The third, and Dave Castro actually mentioned this to us when we interviewed him, the third is you do it strictly online. Mm-hmm. It's possible. They could do something like that. And then the fourth, to me, is that you do a hybrid of both. You do online and you do in person.
Okay.
And right now, I think that might be the most likely scenario.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I think you have to throw in the possibility of a postponement, which we've talked about, moving back in date.
Okay, so that'd be a fifth. Yeah, you're right.
I would actually add another one, a location change.
Yeah, well, that's sure.
That kind of goes with the hybrid.
Right.
I think the location change is a potential too. I think the likelihood that it goes on as planned in location in Madison is very low at this point. It just doesn't feel like that.
I would agree with that.
Because I feel like if that were the case, and we can reference, I think Dave was on a Zoom call not too long ago where he said like, hey, we've got some stuff, but we're not ready to announce yet.
Right.
If it were, hey, things are going on as planned, don't you think they would have announced that by now?
100%.
What's
Absolutely.
holding? Yeah. Now there may be some optics in that they're trying to wait until things clean up, because we're starting to get past that spike, and by holding off on announcing business as usual, that they save face a little bit. But I think it's very unlikely that it would go on as planned. I think the talking with the Madison Area Sports Commission, there haven't been any talks about postponing or canceling the games, at least on their end. But the Alliant Energy Center has just been approved. They've been the governor put in an application to FEMA to use the Alliant Energy Center as a secondary alternative care facility, as the second alternative care facility for COVID patients in Madison.
Interesting.
So that could potentially put the kibosh on anything there, depending on how long they need it for.
Right.
Who knows what that'll run? But I don't. To me, I feel like the online format, with everything that's happened this year, even with the Open, I think the online format would cheapen the games.
I mean, yes, but I think that you can use it in a way. So I think this is what's going to happen, I think, with the online format. I think there's a high probability that the age groups are all going to be exclusively online.
Yeah.
And you can do that because it's only 10 people in each field. So we talk about during the Open a lot, just all the videos they have to review. Now, obviously, you're going to have to have videos. They're going to have to be reviewed.
Yeah.
But you can do that. I don't want to say quickly, but you can manage that with that amount of people. So I think it's highly likely that the Masters and age groups go completely online.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that there's a strong chance. I don't want to say strong. I think there's a chance that the team competition might just get canceled, just because. And I can't remember off the top of my head how many sanctioned events that we've actually had take place here, but I don't know how many participants we would have in a team competition. And then you got to think about numbers too. That's 4 people for every team. So I don't know. I don't think you can hold that online. Maybe you can.
You have 10 teams so far.
Okay, so maybe you could do a team competition in person, but now that's 40 people at least.
Yeah.
Okay, that you have to get in one spot.
And you have to make sure they'll all have the same equipment because online for the team just is
it's hard to do. So would it shock me if they canceled the team competition this year? No, it wouldn't. I hope they don't. But when you're looking at things that you need to do to kind of put on this event, I think when you look at the necessary steps that you need to take, so you've got to do something. You put the age groups online, and there's your online component. Well, part of it. You say, sorry, teams, we just, this year is just not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
And then you'd use, so this is where I think that where you were talking about like a venue change might come into play. I think what you could do if you want to have something in person is that you could take your top 20 in the open, right? You take the people who have qualified through the sanction events. So that would be 10 now, right? Because we had 10 sanction events.
Yeah.
And then, so you have 30 people, and you say, this is our games field. So you would have 60 individual athletes.
That's going to leave some people out.
But
some good people out.
And it will leave some good people out. But again, if you're trying to make the best of a bad situation, you're trying to have an in-person competition, you got to cut the field down somehow before you get there. You can't bring, every national champion. You can't bring, and I think what you could do then is that you could maybe, if you, like you talked about with a venue change, you could bring them out to the ranch.
Yeah. So that when you say it, the hybrid format seems to make more sense to me. I'll go by division here because I think the online format for the age groups makes sense, right? Because they've technically already had 2 filters with the age group online qualifier, which the deadline got pushed back.
Right.
For the announcements on that got pushed back. Understandably so. I think, they maybe do another round of it because while it's cool that I think that the age groups get to do some of the odd object outside of the box type stuff, I think it's less, if we're taking lifestyle and, what stage of life you are as an athlete, I think those aspects are maybe not quite as paramount to the test. That's typically why you see only maybe one of those events at the games, and you see some more of the, I would say, classic CrossFit Plus at the games,
right?
Which is like games level utilizing stuff you see more in the gym. Now, for the team competition, I was kind of thinking about this last night. Could not fall asleep for the life of me because it was running around in my head, and I think. Rogue sent out an email for the Invitational polling their athletes to see what equipment they have available to them, maybe to see what programming is available and stuff like that. But if they're able to identify the 10 teams or whatever it may be, what's stopping Rogue from sending each team a pre-approved equipment package?
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. That's a really good idea.
That you can only use the equipment from here, and you get it set up, whatever, and we're good to go for that. Now,
would that be then? If you did that, would that have to be? Would you do you'd have to have like a video of your workout with that equipment?
You'd have to have a video of your workout and probably an on-site judge or something like that. And I can see them building out potentially some sort of portal. So like a virtual check-in, right? You have to show that you've got this equipment. You have to go and show that you have this available to you. You have to showcase who's judging you, and just a handful of things that kind of check off the box from a team perspective. And I think that similar process could be used to narrow down the field online for individuals. So if we use that hybrid, maybe you take all the national champs and or maybe you take a larger pool than you initially proposed and you do a round of online stuff with those packages, and then the top 30 get to come to the ranch. And that way you add another layer of
I could see that
filtering almost.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that there's got to be some sort of filtering process that takes place before you get to wherever you're going to go. Because let's say that they do decide to use the ranch. Now, first thing, you wouldn't be able to bring in any spectators. I don't think, if we're under the current circumstances that we're in right now, and if they don't change very drastically in a few months. But when you think back to 2016, they had 80 athletes. right? Because they took all 40 men and women to the ranch for 3 events.
Yeah.
So they can do it. Now, if you take or even if you take 20, you make it 40 total.
Yeah.
You can do that. You could have, you'd have some judges. You need to have you would have to have some sort of stream available. You could do have some media presence in order to get it out and do the world feed that they did.
Yeah.
You could do that again, but everybody basically would have to do it remotely, I'm guessing, unless you were planning to bring your own media crew in. And then you could stream it, and you could have a weekend event, and you could have 40 people there, athletes in that space. That's doable. I don't think you would need a permit for that amount. I'm not sure how that would work.
It really depends on what changes now between now and then. But I almost think you could do individuals one weekend and teams on the next, and have the team.
That's
competition
another
at the
really good
ranch
idea.
too.
Sure,
like bring the 10 teams out for the following weekend and knock that out. And who's saying they have to happen on the same weekend at this point?
Right.
Because really the gloves are off, and there's a ton at CrossFit's disposal. I agree with you on the filtering process, and I think there has to, in my opinion, there has to be a live action component to this to maintain, I guess, the legacy and continuity of what the CrossFit Games has been able to claim. Agreed. Think about it. Outside of obviously a nice paycheck, but what does Matt Fraser stand to gain by putting his neck out there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think that, if for him, if you cancel a year, okay, fine, I'll just come and pick up my check next year when I win the whole thing. Yeah, do I take the risk to maybe add a, in quotations, 5th title under these circumstances if it's all online, or do I maintain my legacy, whatever, see you guys next year when we're back to normal, and not risk that tarnish by going out for this what's going to be legitimately probably not the best way to claim, and that this is obviously assuming that everything stays online. But I think if they do a hybrid where they're able to filter down through the online process and then bring a select group of people, I think that would be worth it then. And the ranch is the obvious choice, right? But for sure, for all we know, there may be other options available. Someone mentioned, remember back when, and not everyone was privy to this, but remember when the games were getting bid on? Yeah. What was one of the finalists? Oh man, I can't. I remember cities, a couple cities. Yeah.
One of them was your old
Jacksonville,
Florida. And what state just deemed pro wrestling an essential business?
Florida.
Right now, as much as we like to make fun of Florida might be the last bastion of hope for operating.
Yeah. Because now you mentioned how they deemed the WWE an essential business. You have other sports are now contacting them to use their facilities. Yeah. To say, hey, can we come to the training center and hold a match? I think boxing has started to explore. I don't know if you have
Top Rank. Yeah.
Top Rank is talked to them. So I don't. Yeah, but that's a really good point. And look, knowing what I know about the city of Jacksonville, if you wanted to do stuff outdoors, obviously you have the ocean. They have a couple really good outdoor facilities at the University of North Florida, and they have the stadium might be being used then, but they have a great indoor arena, Memorial Coliseum. They have the baseball grounds that are right there as well. So that you could maybe make that work, but I think the problem that you run into there is that and who knows, but I think that there might be there's probably some more red tape that's involved in getting that done there, as there were if you were going to bring everybody out to the ranch, since that's a private residence.
Yeah, because even at the ranch, you're from the ranch in Aromas, you're a 10 to 12 minute drive from the water. So you go due west into Watsonville area, and then you have your pick between Santa Cruz, the Watsonville waterfront area, which isn't huge. It's more like the Pajaro Dunes. But then you can go south, and depending on it too, because I think Cal State Monterey Bay is right there, and my dad works there. But there's facilities there. There's field facilities. You can access the water. There's a couple of beachheads there that you could swim. Yeah. So there's options there, especially in California, and you're bringing it home. And logistically, it makes a lot of sense for CrossFit because it's right in their backyard, right?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, is just because you can get everything you need to get there pretty easily. And from a numbers standpoint, unfortunately, you're probably not going to have fans, but if you stream it and people can watch it, then you're good to go. But you can manage on 2 weekends. Like, let's say they do that. Let's say they decide to have the teams and the individuals, some sort of component in person.
Yeah.
You could do that on 2 separate weekends. And I think the community would absolutely dig that. And it would put the spotlight on a team competition that you usually don't get because it's wound up in the individual competition. It'd be the only thing going that weekend.
Yeah.
And then the next weekend, you could get however you decide who the top 20, top 30, whatever the number you're going to bring live is. I personally think 20 would be a really good number if you find a way to cut it down, online, do some sort of online qualifier. And then, like the 3 events you were planning to do in Madison, whatever those were, you hold those online. You'd have to modify them because you couldn't have like a long run or anything like that. You have to modify them, then people could submit their videos. But then, see, to me, that the problem now becomes, how do you then validate all those videos? How do you watch all of them? What's the appeals process? All that, because we know during the Open, that's a big deal. And now it's not. This is huge. This is whether or not I get to go compete in person. Like, you got to have the time to get that right.
The implications are massive, and it could, the way we saw it bubble and swell in the Open could be, tenfold because of what's at stake for the games. Oof, man.
Well, and that's why I'm thinking the easiest thing to do is you just take the 20 people who qualified through the Open, and then whoever qualified through sanction events. And I know that's going to leave some people out, but you might know better than me. I was trying to think off the top of my head who was the best finisher at the games who qualified as a national champion and wasn't in the top 20.
So wasn't in the top 20.
Wasn't in the top 20
overall at the games.
No, overall. So wasn't in the top 20. Didn't qualify through the Open, wherever that cut line was.
Okay.
Didn't qualify through a sanction event and only got there because he or she was a national champion.
Okay.
I don't know who the highest finisher was, but I don't think that person, off the top of my head.
Adrian Moonweiler, I believe, for men. Lucas Hogberg last year.
Okay.
Joshua Wichtrup was 18th, was German national champion. Willie George, French national champion, but I believe Willie competed and might have gotten it elsewhere.
But where did any of them make it into the top? Did Moonweiler make it into the top 10? I can't remember.
In the top 10, Moonweiler was 8th last year.
Okay, so he did.
Yeah, and then for the women, I mean, you look at all of those other women.
But he's the exception, not the rule, right?
Yeah, Anna Frakow, which, not anymore. But you look at someone like Alessandra Pacelli, that was 13th. Sure. Someone like Laura Horvath, who... Yeah. I mean, there are a couple, but I think that someone's going to get left out. It's not going to be fair to somebody. Yeah.
But would you be like, if you were holding this competition, you were looking at that field of 20, I don't have it in front of me, but whoever qualified through the Open, and that's not exactly 20, but there's some big names in there, and I think you'd be okay with putting those names on display in an in-person competition.
Yeah. Let me look at this. So I'm curious right now for the Open. I'm going to look at, I want to take a quick look because I think, this could.
Because I think you can do, if you're going to do the online portion of it, you got to start that soon. Yeah. And maybe they make maybe that announcement is coming. It's like, here's what we're going to do. Everyone who's qualified so far, national champion sanction events. And now look, you don't know if any, like, for example, the Asbury Park Summer Games are still going.
Yeah.
Like, they're still planning to have an event. So how do you start before, like, can you start a qualifying process before all these sanction events are done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you might do, if you want to extend it a little bit, maybe you just take everyone that's above the blue line in the Open, because that includes national champs.
Yes,
right?
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're looking at everyone from, plus the sanction event winners. So you're looking at, I mean, at least from the Open, you're looking at, Brent Fikowski, Willie George, Sean Sweeney, Ben Smith, like a lot of big names are still here. Hepner, Travis Mayer, guys that are perennial top, Yonakoski, Olsen, BKG, Fraser, Vellner. So
it's a pretty good group of athletes that you would be bringing. And I probably should have clarified what I meant. I meant exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Who was ever above that blue line. because it includes national champions. Take all of them, and then have like a qualifying, and then you narrow it down online with them. And then, you know what? Honestly, maybe you give the national champions, like people who got left out, maybe you give them some sort of online competition that they get to do where there's some prizes on the line as well, just so they have something to compete for. Because, look, the vast majority of those national champions who would be invited to Carson, who didn't qualify through a sanctioned event, who didn't get in above that blue line, probably are not going to be a factor when it's all said and done.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. And the women's case is even stronger because you go down the list of the people above the blue line from the top. It's Sarah, Annie. I mean, Annie's not anymore, but Kristen, Tia, Jamie Green, now Jamie Simmons officially on the leaderboard. Congrats.
Congratulations.
Yep. Carrie Pierce, Carol Ann Reason-Thibault, Emma McQuaid, Karen Freyova, who I think is a huge sleeper, top 10 this year. Laura Horvath, Brooke Wells, Cara Sanders, Christy Aramo, Camilla Solomons, and Hellman. And you look, and you just keep going down the list. Gabby Magala, Spiegel, Katrin, Amanda Barnhart, Haley Adams is in that list. So it's like
you have a pretty good group.
Yeah.
If you're going to include them, and again, it stinks that people are going to have to get left out. But this is not an ideal situation. But I mean, I think it is doable to where you come up with some sort of wherever that line is going to be, and then you let in whoever qualified through, who has already got an invite. You let them in, and then you pare that field down somehow online before the games actually happen.
Yeah.
And then you take 20 men and 20 women and 10 teams on separate weekends to the games. You take the individuals together, but you take the teams on a different weekend. And you have a 3-day competition at the ranch, old school style. You stream it so people can watch it. Hey, you know what? You could even redo 2008 or 2009. You could just redo all that programming with some exceptions. And they had a lot more athletes competing at the games then than they would now.
You'd have to beef it up. 2008, every time domain was 5 minutes or within 5 minutes. So that, obviously you're missing out on some stuff like that. But I think there's some workouts in 2009 you could beef up, revamp, we kind of,
which
2000,
which they kind of did in 2016 anyway. They did the ranch trail run, they did the deadlift ladder, and then they had the ranch chipper was the third event. Oof, but
that was a nasty workout.
I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do at that facility, and I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think the red tape exists there because it's a private residence, especially if you keep it to 40 athletes. I think you're okay, and no fans. You don't have to worry about parking. You can bus them in.
Yeah.
And you just do your thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's people at home right now that are probably listening. They're like, yeah, but that's more than 10. Well, that's what the stipulations are right now. You have to think about what the stipulations might be in August, which, we've seen 50 to 100 to 250 thrown around in terms of staffing and stuff like that. But one thing we haven't talked about, which, is the wild card pick of the week, is you remember how Dana White and the UFC were going to have Fight Island.
That's right. They were going to have a private island. I remember that. They were looking into that.
It's basically like Most Dangerous Game or, Fight Island, Survivor of the Fittest. Man, that would be awesome if the games had something like that in their back pocket.
Whoever can crack this nut and do this, and yes, the WWE is doing it. No fans, but it's a different animal.
It looks
right
like
there.
the MLB is going to do it.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you? Because a lot of those businesses are built on TV revenue, which you can still get. Now, you're not getting the gate revenue, but I'm not a huge baseball fan. I like it. If you put any two major league teams on the field right now in a game that means something, I am going to watch that.
Oh my gosh, you give me the Cleveland Indians and the Minnesota Twins, and I'd watch a 7-game series.
That is get the popcorn ready stuff right now.
Hurry, Tip! It started. We're gonna miss. We're gonna miss the.
We're gonna miss some live sports.
We're gonna miss the national anthem. Yeah. You could live stream batting practice, and that would be
yes.
Yeah. Oof. Man, I miss sports so much.
Too. But look, I think that the options are out there. I think that the conversations are being had, and obviously the CrossFit Games want to do something. And people I've talked to who are kind of peripherally involved in this, they're being spoken to too as if they're going to be part of it. And that something is going to happen.
Yeah. Fauci even came on and said that there's a pathway for these sports to be back on by the summertime.
Yeah. So, we'll see. But I think that to sum up here, I think that the most likely scenario that we're going to see is the games take place both online and in person, and that some groups aren't going to be able to compete in person, and I think they're going to be strictly online, but there will be a hybrid of both, and I think we will have something to watch. Now, it's going to be different, but to your point, I think they got to do something here to just keep the momentum.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, I think it could be pretty cool, and people would really dig it.
Yeah, and to work backwards here, I think what they decide to do really affects a lot of these sanction events on whether or not they're actually going to take place. Because if they basically say like, hey, we're not going to honor sanction event invites going like for the rest of this year, then what's the point of whole, like?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if you're going to do a robust online qualifier, you got to start soon. And there's still some sanction events that are going. Who are going to be like, yeah, they'd be like, hey, what about us? Like we have big name athletes coming in. If all of a sudden there's no way in. So yeah, I think that to me, that's the biggest hang up to me as to doing an online qualifier is that you just don't know what's going to happen with the rest of these sanction events, and you can't cut their legs out from under them.
Yeah, and man, it's tough because especially some of these events, like you look at the Atlas Games, they prepped basically 18 months for this, and now they're going to have to wait another 12. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at 2+ years for some of these events before they actually get to see a return on what they signed up for. That's harsh. I mean, I don't know how many I don't know what your financial institution background is, but I don't know very many that'll just float you that much money for that long without significant payments or, which is a shame. But
no, for sure.
I think the next 2 weeks will prove very, very key because that brings us into May. And we're 6 weeks out from Rogue then, and 7 weeks out from Asbury Park, and basically June is when everything needs to start moving again on these events, right? Because you think about it, if these events are actually going to take place, then you start to need to put into place all the logistical manpower that needs to actually make sure when people show up on site or wherever they're showing up that it's going to happen.
But then the other question I have for some of these events is that can you do it and make any money if you don't have a bunch of fans there?
Honestly, it may be damage control at this point. It's like and then that's the hard question they're going to have to ask themselves. What's going to be better for us ultimately? A, staying afloat to be actually continue to be an event and not put ourselves in this awful financial situation, and B, be able to provide a good product. Will it be taking a punt, like punting until next year, or paring down and doing a fraction of what we had planned this year, keeping our name involved, and then turning it around again next year?
Well, hypothetically, let's say the Asbury Park games go, and but they can't have a ton of fans there. There's a way for them to pull off an event. Well, what if you stream it and you have sponsors and you say, look, we're going to put you on the, you can get creative with that. So they might not be able to be there in person. You can still offer them some sort of activation online. I mean, I think back to the Mayhem Classic and the stuff that Rory was able to do with some of the sponsors there as far as activation on the stream. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you're going to get your product in front of people, maybe not the way you thought you were going to do it in person, but there's still an avenue to do that. And that you're going to have a lot of eyeballs, because I know people are going to want to watch something to that point. So,
and that's honestly, that's the situation where I'd be okay charging $5 for it.
Yeah.
For a stream. At
that point, sure. I think, if it's $5, why not?
Because at that point, like, you obviously don't have fans, and everyone understands that you're trying to recoup the investment and trying to help support the system here. And I mean, shoot, I'd pay $5 to go watch some CrossFit right now.
Amen. So, yeah, and you're helping the event out. But to be continued. I think that the encouraging stuff is happening, and that at least the conversations are being had, and CrossFit is saying they're going to do something. And I hope, like I said, I think they could fudge this in a way where it'd be pretty cool to do. So we will certainly keep our eyes on that.